Hey guys, welcome to day 4 of my STEM project. This is Vera here, and I hope you guys are having a great day. Now, in today's Python lecture, we're going to be taking a look at three really important Python topics: loops, if conditions, and functions. And what these three Python topics allow you to do is they allow you to kind of make your code first of all look tidier, make your code reusable, and also make allow you to change the flow of your code. And we'll talk about what those three things mean kind of later on in the video as we're tackling with each one of these three concepts. But let's start off this video by taking a look at if conditions. So what are if conditions? Well, if conditions give your computer the power to make decisions. Now, you probably know what a decision is. You make decisions every day. Like, for example, today you might have woken up and based on how you were feeling, you might have decided what you want to do for the day. So, per se, I woke up feeling a bit grumpy. Maybe the first thing I wanted to do would not be studying because the input I get about my feeling doesn't quite match with the output I want, which is studying. So then I might change the trajectory of my day to do something a bit more fun in the morning and then get to studying. And decisions are made like almost every second of your day. You decide what do you want to eat. You decide what you want to wear. So basically, what a decision is at the fundamental level is after taking some input, you process that input and you make an output. So after taking some input about the situation you're in, you process that input and then you make an output of how you want to handle that situation. And that's what if conditions allow your computer to do. Once your computer is given some input, your computer might want to do different things in your program based on what the input is. So maybe if the input points towards one thing, your computer might want to do that thing. Whereas if the input points towards another thing, your computer might want to do that thing. So if conditions allow your computer to kind of take one of two routes or one of many routes based on the input it gets. And one example of this is uh, let's say you're taking a survey of college students and how college is. And to take this survey, you're writing this survey in Python. Now, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to classify whether a person goes to college or not. And then you can either give the survey or not give the survey. So one way to classify whether a student goes to college or not is by asking them for their age, because many students they graduate high school at the age of 18. So if they're anything under the age of 18, then we can say they don't go to college. Now you can kind of see where your computer has to make a decision over here. Your computer, based on the input it gets, which is the age, it has to decide whether to give the person or the user the survey or not. So how your computer could do this is it could use an if condition. So what it could say is over here it could say, okay, so if the age of the person that's currently taking the survey, if the age of the person that's currently taking the survey is greater than 18, then I give them this survey and continue to ask more questions. But if it's not greater than 18, or in other words, if it's less than 18, then I say you are too young for this survey. So you can kind of see how this if condition allows your computer to take one of two choices by deciding which choice to take based on the input it gets. And this is exactly what if conditions do. So now that we know what if conditions do, let's go on into our coding uh, editor. Let's go on into Visual Studio Code and let's try to implement this program where we ask somebody for their age, and if their age is greater than 18, then we say you're in college. If it's not, then we say you're too young for this survey. Okay? So obviously the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take the age as input. And if you remember from our previous tutorial, to do that, we can just say age is equal to int input what is your age. We're converting the string to an int with the int function over here, and then we're storing our data in an age variable. And just to check everything works as of the moment, let's run our program real quick. So remember Python 3, and then now I'm writing my code in flow.py, so we have to say flow.py. Now what is my age? We'll say 15, and you can see it prints out 15, so it works. Now this is where the interesting part comes, because you can see we completed this part of our program where we take our person's age. Now the next thing our program has to do is decide whether to continue asking more questions or print out you're too young for this survey. So what we can do over here is we can use an if condition to decide. So we can say, okay, if age is great, and this is how if conditions work in Python. So you're going to say if, and then over here you're going to add some kind of condition, and then you're going to add a colon, and under that colon, by adding a tab, you're going to write all the code you want to execute, execute after if the condition is true. If the condition is true. So over here, we give a condition, right? And then, so the condition is either going to be like a true or false statement. And if that condition is true, then we want all the code to execute, right? So let's actually write this in Python syntax because this is clearly not Python syntax. So again, we're going to say if, and now we're going to give it our condition. Now in this case, our condition is going to be age greater than 18 because we're checking if the age is greater than 18. And basically what your computer is going to do is it's going to plug in whatever value you got for age over here, and it's going to check, okay, is age greater than 18? If it is, it's going to replace this with true, or the Boolean value of true. If not, it's going to replace this with false, or the Boolean value of false. So you can see why Booleans are important because they play a vital role in if conditions. And then we add a colon, and this is really important. Whenever, so all the code that you want to run if an if condition is true, you have to write it like right under the if condition, and you have to add a tab. So to add a tab, you simply click on the tab button, and you can see how I kind of get some space. And this is actually called indentation. And this is required in Python because that will tell your Python program, okay, so if this condition is true, then I want to run this code. And for now, the code that we want to run can be something like print, you are going to college, right? Now let's run this program, Python 3 flow.py, and then we'll say our age is 15, and you can see nothing is printed because, again, this code is only going to run if this statement over here is true. So is 15 greater than 18? No, 15 is not greater than 18. So your program is basically going to skip over all this code. But if I do the same thing and I do something like 18, you'll see it still won't run because we said age is greater than 18. Is 18 greater than 18? No, 18 is equal to 18, right? So that's not going to work. But if I say something like 19, then you'll see it says you are going to college. So that is great. As you can see, our simple Python program works. But you might have noticed that in our Python program, actually, what we're supposed to do is, if our person is younger than 18, we also have to say you are too young for this survey. So basically, you can see if this condition is true, we want it to print you are going to college. But if this condition is anything other than true, so if this condition is false, or basically if this condition is false and this code doesn't run, then we want something else to run. We want it to print out you are too young for this survey, right? You are too young for this survey. So what we can do in that scenario is, so we know if age is greater than 18, we want you to do this. We're telling our computer that. Now, else, and what this basically means is, if this statement is not true, then this is what I want to do. And again, you add a tab, and then you write the code that you want to run if this statement is not true. So this is kind of like an add-on to an if statement. This is called an if-else statement, and then this kind of gives your program two directions it can go in. So it can either go in one direction if your statement is true, but if your statement is false, it's going to go in the other direction. So in this case, we can say print, you are not in college, right? Now, if we run this program, you'll see, if I type in 19, it's going to say you're going to college. But if I type in something like 10, it says you are not in college. So that is really cool, right? We made this simple Python program to check if you're going to college or not. Now, before we move on to the next part of this video, I just wanted to make something clear. So so as you can see over here, we're writing our if condition, right? Over here, we're writing our if condition, and then over here, we use the greater than operator. But there's a bunch more operators that you can use in your if condition, and here's what you can do. So you can say age less than 18, you can say age, and then this doesn't have to be 18, this can be any number, right? Like you can choose your age to be any number. Or for that matter of fact, Your age can be a variable too, as long as like both the values on both sides of this operator are integers or floats, you will be fine. So I can say age is less than 18. I can say age is greater than or equal to 18. So to say greater than or equal to, I just have to put the greater than sign and equal to sign. I can say age is less than or equal to 18. And again, less than or equal to is just going to be less than and equal to sign. I can also check if our age is equal to 18. Now to check if your age, or to check if two variables have the same value, or to check if a variable is equal to a certain value, what you can do is you can say age is equal to equal to. So remember, it's two equal to's, not one equal to. Because if you remembered, whenever you say equal to, you're assigning a value, right? So like for example, over here we use a single equal to, and now we're assigning a value. If we use two equal to's, we're checking if two values are the same. So age is equal to 18. And then of course you can also say age is greater than 18. So these are kind of all the operators that you can perform, or all the things that you can put in your if condition. So yeah, over here I can put something like greater than or equal to 18. Now if I put greater than or equal to 18, you'll see whenever I type 18, it says you are going to college, right? So that's pretty cool. Now we've taken a look at the basic if statement, right? Now the next thing I want to take a look at are elif statements. So now we're going to take a look at elif statements, and what elif statements allow you to do is, you can see over here whenever we use an if-else statement, there's only two directions that our computer can go in. It can either go over here true, or it can either go over here false. But you might also realize that there are some situations where you might want to check multiple factors. Like for example, let's say you're making a grading application where if you give it a number grade, you get a letter grade. And in the US, how it works is a 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to a 89 is a B, then a 70 to a 79 is a C, and then a 60 to a 69 is a D, and then basically anything else 0 to 59 is an F. So maybe you want to make a program where if you're given a number grade, it gives you a letter grade. You can see how you kind of have to compare your input to multiple values. So you have to check if our number is greater than 90. If our number is between this range, then we want to print out A. If it's not, we have to check if our number is in this range, or if it's in this range, or if it's in this range. Now, of course, you can just use multiple if conditions, like one if condition for each, but using an else if or using an elif will just make your statement a lot more efficient. So let's take a look at how elif statements work. Let's take a look at the elif statement by making basically a grading application where we go from 90 to, where given a number, we check which range this number falls in, and then we give them the letter grade. So I'm going to actually write this in a new file, and as you can see, I created a new file called gradingapp.py, and then I'm just going to copy these values and put it over here for future reference, right? So 90 to 100. So first of all, what we're going to have to do is, obviously, we're going to have to take input regarding what their number grade is. So we can say number grade is equal to int input, what is your number grade? Now here's something really important. The reason my variable names are really long is because it's good practice to write your variable names in a way that they kind of describe what data they're holding. And this is just going to help you debug and help you code whenever you're writing big applications with like hundreds of variables. So yeah, that's just a quick tip, I guess. Now that we have our number grade, what we have to do is we have to check if our number grade falls in any one of these ranges. And based on that, we have to check if our number grade falls in any one of these ranges, and based on that, we can print out whether it's A, B, C, D, or F. So how we can do that is, obviously, first we're going to write an if statement, right? So we can say if number grade is less than 100. Now you might kind of see a problem here. Whenever I want to check if a certain number is in a range, for example, if I want to make sure that if I want to check if my number grade is in the range of 90 to 100, I first have to check if my number grade is less than the higher value of the range, in this case 100, and then I have to check if my number grade is greater than the lower value of the range, or in this case 90. So you can see how in my if condition I need two conditions. First of all, I need to check if number grade is equal to 100, or if it's greater than or equal to 100. Then I also have to check if number grade is less than or my bad. So over here I have to check if number grade is less than or equal to 100, right? Because if my number grade has to fall in the range of 90 to 100, it has to be less than or equal to 100, and it has to be greater than or equal to 90. Now, do you notice how I said the word and? Because both of these statements have to be true in order for our entire statement to be true, right? Because if I just say number grade less than or equal to 100, my grade could be something like a 79, but technically it would still be less than or equal to 100, so it wouldn't count. Therefore, we need both of these statements to be true. And how I can make sure that how I can kind of format this for my code to understand is I can write my first condition over here, and then I can say and my second condition. And what this and over here does is it's a special word in Python. And what the and does is it checks, okay, are both of my statements true? So in your program, after your code runs, these true statements are either going to be a true or false value. So whenever you have like true and true, your statement is going to end up being a true value. However, in order for like this condition to prove as true, both sub conditions, so both of these conditions have to be true whenever you're using an and operator. So since over here I'm using an and operator, both this, so number grade less than or equal to 100, and this, number grade greater than or equal to 90, have to be true. If either one of these is false, then this entire thing is going to be false. So only a true and a true make a true when using an if condition. So if I had something like, I don't know, if I had something like true and false, that would result in a false. And then I can use and for like more than two conditions. So I can have like a true and true and true. In this case, since all of them are true, we're going to have an output as true. However, I can have a true and false and true. And if that's the case, then our output is going to be false because we have a false. So that's how a true and condition works. However, if you have something like, if you have a condition where only one of the conditions has to be true, then you can use an or. So if I use an or, if I say true or true, it's going to be a true. However, if I say true or false, it's also going to be a true. Because whenever I use an or operator, so if I put an or over here, I just need one of these to be true. So if number grade is less than or equal to 100, or number grade is greater than or equal to 90, if either one of these two things are true, the entire thing is going to evaluate to being true. However, if I use an and again, both of these have to be true to evaluate to be true. So this is kind of how it works, where if number grade is less than or equal to 100 and number grade is greater than or equal to 90, then we can see it falls in the range of an A. So we can print out A. And then we can just copy, give me 1 second. Then we can just copy and paste this code over and over again. 2, 3, 4, 5, because we have 5 letter grades, right? And then, so if it doesn't print A, then we want to check the next thing. So we want to check if it falls in the range of 89 and 80. Or if it falls in the range of 79 and 70. Or if it falls in the range of 69 and 60. Or finally, if it falls in the range of 0 and 59. And now we also have to change these outputs, because we know if it falls between the range of 89 and 80, it's going to be a B. If it falls in the range of 79 and 70, it's going to be a C. And then again, 69 and 60 is a D, and that's an F. So that's going to be our program. And you can see how using these are called compound conditions. Using compound conditions, we can check if these things are in a range. So let's run this Python program. What is my number grade? If I say something like 100, you'll see it prints an A. But if I say something like 57, what's wrong? Oh, okay. So do you see the error over here? I said number grade is less than or equal to 0 and greater than 50, greater than or equal to 59. So you can see how this if condition is kind of like meant to fail, because if my number is less than 0, it can't be greater than 59. So I kind of got confused and I wrote these backwards. Now if I type in 57, you'll see it says F. Now if I type in, I don't know, something like 73, C. Okay, so that's how this program works. And now I want to kind of look at another aspect of this program. You can see how this program is kind of like really inefficient. Because let's say my input value for this program is something like 87, right? Now, obviously, our program works. That's good. But you'll see, how does our program how does our program flow in this case? Well, first we'll check. Okay, is grade 87 is 87? It does 80 is 87 less than equal to 100 and greater than or equal to 90? Is that true? No, it's not true. So it's false. So nothing happens. Then our code moves our Python program moves on to this line, and we check. Okay, is number grade less than or equal to 89 and greater than or equal to 80? It is, so we print B. Now, logically speaking, as a human, we know if our letter grade is B, it can't be any of these other stuff. Then we know automatically that all these other stuff is false, because we know that if our number falls into this range, our number is not going to fall into any other range. So if this computer was a human, logically speaking, we would just end our program over here and not consider any of these other if conditions, because it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, we already found our answer. So why would we want to dig deeper? Because we know all of these are going to be false just because this is true. However, your computer is not a human and it cannot think logically. So what your computer is going to do is it's going to go over here, it's going to check this condition, and it's going to check this condition, and it's going to check this condition. You can see how this is kind of inefficient, because you're wasting a lot of your computer's power by just letting it do things that are not that are not required. So this is an inefficient algorithm, or this is an inefficient piece of code. And although this might not make that big of a difference in a small program like this, let's say you're working on a robot. Every single line of code matters. And so if you have your computer executing 3 lines of code that are not necessary, then you're just wasting a lot of power on your already very little computer, because robots, like the computers on robots, are not that powerful. Or on most robots, or the robots that like many hobbyists build. So you can see how we want to make our program more efficient by telling the computer, hey computer, if this condition is true, then none of these conditions are going to be true, so you don't have to execute them. And same thing, if this condition is true, then none of these conditions are true. So how can I tell my computer that? Well, I can tell my computer that by simply, instead of putting an if over here, I can put an elif over here and put an elif to all of these if statements. And what this elif basically does is, elif is another way of saying else if. So basically, what we're saying is, okay, if this statement is true, I want you to execute this. But if and only if it's not true, then I want you to try to look at if this statement is true. Hence, else if. So we know how like the else statement is the code that you want to run if this statement is not true. So basically what we're doing is we're adding the if component to an elif. We're adding the if component to an else statement by giving the else statement a condition. So we say, okay, if our number grade is less than or equal to 100 and our number grade is greater than or equal to 90, then I want you to run this. But if that's not true, then I want you to check this condition. If this condition is true, then I want you to run this. But if it's not true, then I want you to check this condition, and so on and so forth. And in fact, over here, instead of actually putting this condition, I can make this just an else. Because think about it. If none of these conditions are true, if my grade is neither an A, B, C, or D, it has to be an F, right? That's the logical way to go. So we don't need a condition over here. We already know that since all of these are false, the only other option we have is F. So you can see how this kind of allows you to we can see how how using elif statements allows your computer to make multiple decisions, right? It allows your computer to take one of many paths. So that's how elif statements work. And in fact, another cool thing is instead of using compound conditions over here, I can just use a single condition. So I'll write the code and then I'll explain it to you guys real quick. Okay. So let me just write this code. So you can see how like we're making our code easier and more efficient by instead of using two statements or two conditions for each if statement, we're just using one condition. And you might wonder, well, how, like, is this gonna work? Because if we want to check if a number is in a range, we need two conditions, as we discussed previously. So is this gonna work? Well, you see, how our program is gonna work is, so basically, first we're gonna check if our number grade is greater than or equal to 90. If it is greater than or equal to 90, then we know it's an A. But if it's not greater than or equal to 90, doesn't that just mean that our number grade is less than 90? Like, if you think about it logically, if a number is not greater than or equal to 90, it's just common sense that it's less than 90. So that means if our number grade is greater than or equal to 80, and since this is false, our number grade is less than or equal to 90, hence, it falls into the range of a B. And the same goes on for C and D. And the only reason that this logic works is because we're using an elif statement. Because we know these if conditions are only going to run, and they're only going to run if this statement is false. So then we can run, so all these conditions we can make under the assumption that this condition is false. So that's kind of what's cool about elif. You can manipulate its, I guess, its attributes to kind of help you. You can use its cool attributes to create your own logic that's way more efficient. So this is our Python program that is basically a grading app. Now, in the next part of this course, we're gonna take a look at loops. Specifically, we're gonna take out while loops, and using while loops, we'll see how we can kind of reiterate our code, or we can make our code run multiple times. And yeah, I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys in that bit of the tutorial. So now let's take a look at while loops. So while loops are actually really simple, and what while loops allow you to do is they allow you to run a set of code until like a condition is true. So here's what I mean by that, right? So let's say we want to run our code. Let's say we want to run this entire code, right? Let's say we want to run all this code like an X amount of times. So let's say our user, or the person that's using this program, has multiple courses that they want to enter the number grade for. So what we have to do is we have to take in the amount of courses that they have, and we have to repeat this code for every one of those courses. So we have to run this code like X amount of times. So how I can do that is I can basically do that using while loops. So per se, so first of all, we have to take in how many classes they have, right? So we'll create a variable called number of classes, and we'll set that equal to int, again, input. This should be familiar by now. What is the, how many classes do you have? How many classes do you have, right? Also, I'm going to add a colon over here for this prompt just to make it look better. Now, what I want you to do, what I want my code to do is I want it to run this code, this subset of code, like this number of, so whatever value I get in number of classes, let's say that value is X, right? So whatever integer they give me, let's say that's X. What I want to do is I want to run this code X amount of times. Now, obviously, you might think, well, why can't I just copy and paste this code X amount of times, right? Well, the problem is we don't know what X is. They could say we want to run the code 5 times. They could say we want to run the code 20 times. We don't know what that value is. So what we can do is we can basically use a while loop to go through those many amounts, or those many to basically run the code those many times. So I can say, first of all, I have to create a variable called I, and this is basically called an iterator, and we'll see why we need to create a variable called I, and we'll say I is equal to 1. Now what we want to do is we want to say while, And this is how a while loop works. We type in while, right? And over here, we add a space, and over here, we add a condition. Just like we added the condition in the if condition, over here, we add a condition in the while loop. So we'll say while I is less than or equal to number of classes, and now, as long as this condition is true, what we want to do is we want to run this code, right? So since this is the code that we want to run inside this while loop, we're going to tab all of this code. So select all of this code and click on tab, and that's basically going to add like a bunch of spacing in front of each line of code, and that's going to tell your computer, okay, if this while condition is true, then I want you to run all of this code. And we want to, what the while loop does is it keeps on repeating this code until this condition is false. So basically how your code is going to work is we're going to start at number of classes, we're going to get the value, right? And then we're going to declare I is 1, and we're going to check, okay, is I less than or equal to value? So let's say over here they say, I don't know, they give us 20 classes. So we'll say, is I less than or equal to 20? Yes, it is. So you're going to run this code. Now we're going to say again, is I less than 20? Yes, it is. So we're going to run this code. And you'll see how this code is kind of going to run forever because I, which is 1, is always going to be less than 20. But we don't want our code to run forever. We want our code to stop after running 20 times, right? And actually, whenever your code runs forever in a loop, it's called an infinite loop. Now, since I want my code to only run 20 times, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the I variable as a kind of counter. So we're going to put an I, we're going to, at the end of all our code over here, we're going to say I is equal to I plus 1. And what this does, what I is equal to I plus 1 does, is it increments the value, or it adds 1 to this I variable each and every single time this code runs. So at first, I is going to be 1. After this code runs 1 time, it's going to be 2. After this code runs twice, it's going to be 3. After this code runs 4 times, it's going to be 4. And as you can see, every time this code runs, the I value is going to increase, and eventually it's going to get to 20. And after that, it's going to get to 21, right? So whenever our I value gets to 21, that means it's the 21th time that this while loop is running. But obviously 21 is not less than or equal to 20, and that hence your while loop is going to stop running. So you can kind of see how your while loop uses this condition to check if your while loop uses this condition to check whether it should continue running the while loop or not, right? And now you'll see this program is going to work exactly the way we want to, because if we run this program, it's going to check how many classes do you have, and if I say 5, it's going to ask me 5 times. So I'll just say 95 times. And you can see how this piece of code runs again and again 5 times, right? So that's pretty cool. We found a way to run our code multiple times using a while loop. Now, I just want to look at one last thing in our code, one last feature of the while loop, and that's called the break function. So what the break function does is, let's say in your code you have a feature where anywhere in your while loop, if like something doesn't seem right, then we want to stop the while loop. So for example, in this case, before actually running any of this code, we want to check if our number grade is greater than 0. If our number grade is less than 0, let's say we want to stop this while loop and end the program. In that case, what we can do is we can say if number grade is less than 0, right? That checks if our number grade is negative. And if our number grade is negative, then what we can do next is we can check, okay, so if our number grade is less than 0, the next thing we have to do is we have to stop this while loop. So how do we stop this while loop, right? So using the break function, whenever you write the break function, what that's going to do is whenever your code runs the break function, this while loop is immediately going to stop. So your program is immediately going to go from this line all the way to whatever code is next, whatever code comes after the while loop. So after your while loop is done running, it's immediately going to stop and it's going to go to whatever code is after the while loop. So the break function, it basically, breaks the while loop, hence the name. So how many classes do you have? Let's say I have 20 classes, right? 76, some random number, 45, it works. However, if I say -9, you'll see my program immediately stops, because whenever I entered -9, this function turns out to be true, so we just put break over here, and that's going to stop our while loop. So that's going to be all for today's video. As you guys can see in today's video, we talked about what while loops are, how they work, and if conditions, and all of that. Now, I know I did say we're going to talk about functions in this video, but I think that would be a bit too much for today. So for today, we're going to leave out the functions part, and we're just going to look at these while loops, okay? So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you guys for watching. In our next video, what I think we're going to do is we're going to take a look at functions, and we're going to take a look at nested while loops, which is a really cool topic, and I'm looking forward to teaching that topic. But that's what's going to be in tomorrow's lecture, and I'll see you guys in that one. Bye-bye.